You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Wednesday. Yes, it is Wednesday. I stuttered there for a second because I was like, what day is it? The only thing I know is today is early signing day. How do I know that? Well, been up since 5:30 in the morning after going to bed at 2. So, Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. So distracted, so loopy today. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Ohl, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And at this point of me recording this, and I kind of put off recording this for an hour because I've been waiting for the final signee to send in his paperwork. It hasn't happened yet to this point at 6:25 in the p.m. And I'm waiting on Jair Hill. But Michigan got a commitment from Jair Hill. Michigan got a commitment from Carmelo English. Michigan did not get a commitment from Malachi Nelson, nor Jeremiah Love, or that's really was kind of it. There was the tight end from Michigan State, whose name escapes me, but nonetheless, Michigan still finished out pretty well, right? Jair Hill's a guy that we all kind of long expected to end up in this class. He had an epic troll, and it was even more epic the way that everything ended up going down today from what we weren't able to see, because he not only in the last couple of days did he release a top 5 without Michigan, he made it look like it was going to be a Purdue-Illinois battle. Sets up his table. His table's got Purdue and Illinois banners right in front, and he shows a video, which is what we couldn't see on the ESPN broadcast or any other little live stream. He ended up sharing it on Instagram later, but it's got this dramatic, all these different things showing Purdue and Illinois and just really setting it up before it shows a Michigan commitment graphic and he puts on the Michigan hat. So that is an epic troll job by him. But Michigan really did get some good players in this class. It might not be the high end level that you hope for, especially coming off of a college football playoff berth. I have some numbers I'm going to get into. It's something that we've talked about a lot on this podcast, but this is getting into the specific numbers is not something that I've done before. So we're going to get into that in a moment, but I really just want to talk about some of these players because there's some that I think are relatively unheralded that are going to end up being pretty incredible. Kind of similar to the 2018 class where it seemed like there were a lot of where 3 of the services rated a player a 3-star. Then you had one as an outlier rating him a 4-star. And it was like that almost all the way across the board. If you were to, they weren't consensus. There were only about, I think, 9 consensus 4-stars in this class out of the 23 commitments. I think there's only 9. But it's kind of like the 2018 class in the sense of, if you sit there and you went and tried to figure out which ones all had a 4-star ranking, see, like one of the things that I'd learned, which sometimes upsets people mostly from rival fan bases, is you use the highest ranking when you do like the commitment post. That was something I learned from my time at 24/7 Sports, and that was more, whatever, obviously, their higher ranking was, whether it was the composite or their, internal rankings. You go with the higher one. And in large part, that's because of the kid. I learned that really quickly. It was David Ajabo, I believe. I had written his commitment story, and I was like, yeah, 3-star out of New Jersey. And I got a message from David Ajabo. He's like, I am a 4-star on ESPN. I'm like, well, I didn't check ESPN. So anyway, but nonetheless, I mean, they've at least gotten the eye. I'd say 2/3 of the class have at least gotten the eye of somebody. Now, it is a very low floor, high ceiling type of class. I don't begrudge anyone who's disappointed in the class, given what Michigan has done on the field versus what they're doing in recruiting, because you would certainly expect it to be a lot higher and a lot better given the way that they've played on the field. But ultimately, I mean, this is kind of where Michigan has been in the last few years. The landscape has changed, certainly with NIL, and things do change really quickly. Right now, Michigan's sitting at 17th. Texas A&M had the number one class by like a long shot last year, and they're sitting at 16th. You know, things can change in a hurry for better or for worse. At least Michigan got out of the doldrums being in the low 20s, right? You finish with Jamel Howard and Nicholas Harbor. Suddenly things are looking a little bit different. I don't think it will change their ranking that much, but certainly people will feel a little bit better about the high end of the class. But this class is very similar from guys like, you know, at being at the top, and then you bring in Carmelo English and some others. It's very similar to that 2018 class. It's just that the floor is a bit lower based off of what the rankings say. And I think you need to take a mixture of, I have a lot of, hey, stargazers, relax type attitudes as well as episodes here. I think you need to have a little bit of a mix, right? You have to understand, like, you can't just take flyers on everybody, which is kind of what it feels like Michigan did. But you also have to trust the coaches' evaluations to some degree, right? Like, Michigan isn't going to go and offer someone that they don't think is, that they can't at least develop into a player. And I mean, the 2018 class is proof positive that they can do that, right? Heck, Michigan State even going to the playoff, and didn't go well for them in 2015. I mean, the fact that they were able to make it, they weren't recruiting in, you know, the tens or whatever. So Michigan's been, the last couple classes have not been top 10, and Ohio State's has, and Michigan's beaten them twice pretty, you know, sufficiently, significantly anyway. So you have to take a bunch of different things and factor them in. It's development, deployment, culture. Yes, rankings, because you do want to see them be able to get some higher ranked guys, but Michigan, as I've said time and time again, has had better success with getting more out of their you know, middling 4 stars, even their high 4 stars, and their high-end 3 stars than they tend to get out of their 5 stars. Their 5 stars have been good, and I know someone was really upset with the way I characterized Donovan Peoples-Jones. All I was saying is he didn't produce like a 5-star would, right? He didn't have that. Some of the other guys who were around him, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, they were like wow performers on the field. Donovan Peoples-Jones wasn't that. No, Michigan's offense wasn't necessarily conducive to that either, and him catching passes from John O'Korn for the bulk of the year probably didn't help. Again, no offense to John, but it still wasn't of that caliber. There's nothing wrong with saying that. Whereas Michigan's gotten a lot more from the Chase Winoviches. He was a 4-star, but kind of like the outside, the lower 4-star, if I remember. You know, he was a positional journeyman. You know, Devin Bush was not like a highly rated player. I think a lot of people forget that. He played like a 5-star, but he was not. I think he maybe ended up being a 4-star in 3 of the 4 services once everything was said and done. But I know that he was a 3-star late in the process. So you have to have a mixture, right? It's not strictly trust the coaches. It's not strictly trust the evaluators. Not every evaluator is going to get a chance to see every single guy, right? Luke Schoonmaker, obviously outperforming his 3-star ranking, that type of thing, you know? So it's, there's a lot of certainly potential projects that I'm curious, and I can't wait to hear what Jim Harbaugh has to say on the podcast coming out with John Jansen about what he sees from this class. Sometimes a class like 2017 just doesn't work out, and sometimes a class like 2018 does. Now, catching lightning in a bottle is easier said than done, but for those, and this is obviously to those who are fretting this whole open, It's one of those things where one class isn't going to make or break you anyway. It's the culmination of talent you have on your roster. And if you get half of your class to be productive, you're doing a really good job, especially considering if you go through what Michigan's been under Jim Harbaugh, that's actually been pretty rare. 2018 is kind of when you finally got everybody kind of working out. So, all right, we are going to continue talking about this recruiting class. We'll get into the players individually. I'll just try to give some thoughts on some different ones for a moment. But I want to continue this line of thinking because I have some numbers I want to share with you. And we'll transition there in segment 2. But before we do that, I do want to share with you that BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to a college bowl season to basketball and World Cup, which that's over, but we've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. I will tell you what, I cannot believe that in 5 days from now, I will be in Phoenix, Arizona, getting ready for the college football playoff. That is shocking to me. It's like coming up. I am not prepared. Not prepared at all. I'm not used to signing day. I feel like that happens a week earlier than now. I'm used to just that. You got a little bit of time. You got the holiday, and then you're gone. Not ready. And we got a snowstorm coming here, so need to get out of here. That's the delirium of having worked for 13 straight hours talking. Anyway, I've likened Michigan's class, the way that Michigan's trajectory has been to Clemson in many different ways. And sometimes I've gotten scorn from it. You know, some national people I've gotten in arguments with and such. They say, "Well, you can't compare them to Clemson. That's a once in a lifetime situation." Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. No one thought Clemson was going to win the championship at any point because Clemsoning was used as a verb to describe a team that shoots itself in the foot and snatches defeat from the jaws of victory, right? But I went ahead and I looked at the recruiting rankings. And I've done this kind of on the fly before, but I actually wrote things down here. And I denoted the years in which Clemson had gone to the playoff. I mean, it was easy because they went 6 straight years, went to the playoff and won the national championship. And how they recruited afterwards. And it's not too much different, to be honest. So, and I did it side by side with Michigan as well. Now, I'll go through it at Clemson and then Michigan. And actually, let's just rattle off the Clemson years, and then we'll do all of Michigan's, and then I'll do a little bit more of a comparison here. I started in 2012 because they made their first college football playoff in 2015. So the 2012 class would have been the first to really impact that, right? So in 2012, Clemson had the 20th ranked class. 2013, they were 15th, 16th in 2014, 9th in 2015. So then they go to the college football playoff in 2015. Their 2016 class, and keep in mind, no early signing day then. It was still National Signing Day proper. 11th. So a little bit worse than the year before, but still borderline top 10. Then they win the thing. They win the whole thing in 2016. And their 2017 class, which, again, National Signing Day, no early signing day. So people had plenty of time to react to Clemson winning the national championship. 16th rated class after winning their first national championship. Then things got better and stayed better. They have been pretty much a top 10 class, with this particular year that we're going through right now potentially being the exception, because then they were 7th, 10th, 3rd, 5th, 9th, and 11th. In that same time frame, Michigan, starting in 2012, keep in mind, Clemson, 20th class in 2012. Michigan, 6th, then 4th, then 20th, then 37th. That was the transition between Brady Hoke and Jim Harbaugh. 8th, 5th, 22nd. That's the class that were seniors when Michigan won the Big Ten championship, went to the college football playoff. 8th, 10th, 13th, 10th, and right now they sit at 17th. Clemson's average is 11th in that time frame. I even took out the last 2 years as the same. And Michigan's average has been 13th, same deal. Really what hurts Michigan is that 2015 class. And Clemson is more hurt by going back all the way to 2012 with their 20th. So the recruiting is pretty close to even, right? Like the difference between the 11th and the 13th teams in the country in terms of recruiting ranking is not this vast, crazy thing, you know? Clemson's certainly gotten more 5-stars, and they've gotten them at important positions, like obviously Trevor Lawrence being the one. Others haven't necessarily worked out. I think DJ Uiagalelei was like a high 4-star if memory serves. But nonetheless, I mean, it really is about having the right players at the right positions as well as the deployment. Some of the guys that Clemson's had and that I've watched that have excelled, sometimes are those 3-stars. It's the same kind of deal. It's a buy-in to the culture. Now, the other thing is it's you know, Michigan has starting to kind of do better by their talent that they have brought in. And I think you need a couple special classes. I think that's where things get a little bit muddled in the sense of when you're Clemson. Now, they had won their last national championship in 2018. That's the last time they won it. They did appear in another, but their classes were only top 5 after they won it. And they haven't done so since. And really, the 2020 class, I mean, they only were in it one more year, right? And they lost to Ohio State. But recruiting rankings play a part, but coaching plays just as much of a part. Development, culture, all of those things, and really, it's a lot of it has to do with where where there's a confluence between all of that, right? Between the coaching, the culture, and the ability. And the work ethic, the will, the knowledge, all of that has to play into it. There has to be a place where a player has God-given talent and ability, but that has to meet work ethic, right? That was a culture problem at Michigan. They had guys who came into Ann Arbor who had ability, but they were resting on their laurels way more than they should have been. And I know there's people that will sit there and dispute that, but I know that for a fact, having spoken to people in that building often. So it is different when you can find a guy who can be an impact player. Like, how many people would trade Mike Sainristil for anything right now, right? He was a 3-star flip from Virginia Tech. A defensive back they brought in, said, we're going to play you at wide receiver, and then flips back over to defensive back in his senior year. Who are you really going to give him up? See, that's the thing. You can develop, and sometimes coaches can see something in a guy and say, we can work with that. And that's important. Because you have to keep in mind, while we sit there and look at the recruiting rankings, they're watching tape. And yeah, they're probably glancing at some recruiting rankings here and there. And some coaches, like Urban Meyer, I believe, was always very famous for just looking at 24/7 Sports and saying, okay, here's the rankings. These are the guys we're targeting. That's not how Jim Harbaugh's staff has really ever worked. Now, if there's the confluence between their tape evaluations as well as guys who, like a Donovan Edwards type, high rankings, and hey, we actually want this guy too, then that's all the better. All right, so enough of that. I think you can tell that in between like posting all of these signing capsules. I've been on the message boards because that's why I feel like I'm starting off with 2 segments of a negative bent, or trying to talk people out of a negative bent. But we are going to continue on in just a moment. All right, let's get positive, right? Because we got some players to talk about. It's a day of celebration, and I'm being all... Here's the thing. When I am tired, when I don't get any sleep, I get cranky. I mean, that's everyone. No one really gets tired and is like, man, this is the happiest I've ever been. But that's probably why we started off with such a downer on our signing day extravaganza episode. But there's a lot of guys in this class that I really like. Before I get into that, I still am kind of stunned to some degree that a guy like Jeremiah Love, who supposedly was still considering Michigan and hearing overtures from Michigan before signing with Notre Dame, I don't know how a guy like that watches Michigan's offensive line win 2 straight Joe Moore awards, watches what Blake Corum does, and then watches what Donovan Edwards does. Watches Michigan go to the college football playoff. And I understand there's a lot of optimism for Marcus Freeman, but I don't understand how you watch what Michigan's doing, the way that offense runs, the way it features running backs and all of that. And you say, yeah, know what? I'm going to another school. It's not a knock on Notre Dame. It's a knock on just about any other school, with a few exceptions. Because it's, when you look at some schools, you're like, man, that kid really runs the ball really well. Michigan's got 2 of those because they feature him so heavily. So I don't know. And the reason why I think about that right now is I'm just looking at Cole Cabana, because I feel like everyone's like, oh, Michigan needs a running back. Michigan needs a running back. Cole Cabana, very well, it seems kind of like he's going to be a kind of guy similar to Donovan Edwards. He's not the same player, of course, but I mean, track star type guy, very well could be a receiver. And I think sometimes that there's a little bit of a lapse, because I think people sometimes forget. Like, he was like a 3-star when he committed to Michigan. And then he gets that 4-star. He's ranked, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, 169th in the country. Right? Like, that's overall. Like, that's pretty good, especially for a kid, 10 miles away from Ann Arbor already. 9th best running back in the country. Normally, Michigan gets the 9th best running back in the country. You're like, all right. But for some reason, goes kind of unheralded. But, I mean, there's so many different guys here. I was really excited about the Carmelo English pickup. I think that's a game changer. In a similar way that the 3 that they brought in last year are. But, I feel like at some point, someone's going to come in and be that Ronnie Bell type, in the sense of start to make an impact in first year, right? And Michigan's usually not shy about playing freshmen. They were this year at the receiver position. I could see Carmelo English being an instant impact guy. I was really excited about that pickup. But there's a number of guys that I would look at in this class and say, these guys are going to be beast for sure. Most of them end up being in the higher end of the rankings, yes, because that's what, when you're proven talent, you're going to get ranked higher. It's just what it is. Doesn't mean you're going to pan out, but you're going to be ranked higher. At Cole Cabana, Carmelo English. I mean, Evan Link is going to be really good. I'm really big on Samaj Bridgman. Speaking of Samajes, Samaj Morgan is a guy that I don't necessarily think is going to play in year 1, but I think by year 2, year 3, we're going to be like, man, this kid's really good. Deacon Tonielli, it's a tight end that we're just like, Michigan kind of quietly brought in 2 tight ends. Zach Marshall, for that matter, seems like more of a project, but he has the look, even just seeing him in person on the sidelines, has the look of a guy, and watching a little bit of his film, that's the look of a guy that's going to be really good. Didn't play great competition until he transferred to Carlsbad, but still did really well when he went to Carlsbad. Didn't have that drop off. Frederick Moore, I really like the receiver class. I realize. I think that it might not be as flashy as what they brought in. I mean, the top end is maybe a little bit. I'd say that Darius Clemens and Carmelo English are probably on that same level. But then rankings wise, I mean, I think that you'd look at, Amarian Walker. I know he was a 3-star. And Tyler Morris, who was a 4-star, probably would have been a higher 4-star if he didn't get injured in the senior year. I mean, I think it compares nicely to the 3 they brought in, Frederick Moore being the other one. Trey Pierce. I think that guy's going to be an absolute beast. I think he is going to be incredible. Defensive tackle already at that size, 6'3", 290. I mean, he was going to go to Wisconsin. That should speak for itself. Linemen who were going to go to Wisconsin and flip to Michigan. Yeah. I think that works. Hayden Moore had a really good senior year, Colorado. So that's the other thing you got to take into account too. Where's the guy from? Colorado? He's probably not going to be rated super, super high. Just because the presence of the scouts out there generally is not in that region. They're in New England. They're in the Midwest. Yeah, they're going to get seen. In the South, yeah, they're definitely going to get seen. Colorado, not as much. But yeah, those are the guys. And then obviously Kendrick Bell, because how are you going to discount Ronnie Bell's little brother? Especially if you see any of his highlights, and yes, he's at quarterback. Michigan sounds like they're going to let him start out there. I don't know that he'll finish there, but you never know, right? You never know. Guys can come out of nowhere. Happens all the time. Especially, we saw Ronnie Bell do that. People were complaining up and down. I remember I was out to dinner with my grandparents when Ronnie Bell committed, and I had to write the article on my phone really quick. And at least I think I wrote the article on my phone. I might have passed it off to a colleague at 24/7 at the time. I think was I at 24/7 or was I at, I don't remember exactly when that was. Yeah, I was at 24/7 when he committed. And I just remember just the meltdown that happened when he committed. Now, team captain, fan favorite, got injured. Everyone's like, oh, woe is me. It's that kind of player. Not going to discount his brother. Sounds like his brother's pretty incredible. Looks like it from what we can see. So there are some guys there. And then a lot of these other guys, how do they develop? Benjamin Hall, the big running back. He's 5'10", 225 already. How does he develop? Right? I know we look at some of these players and say that's a guy that Michigan took a flyer on. They offered him really early. Then sometimes the guy they offer really early ends up still being pretty good. Josh Metellus was a guy that was offered at the same time. Like he and Devin Gill committed before Devin Bush, right? Same high school. Josh Metellus is still starting in the NFL right now. Right? Like he's still doing it. He was the lowest rated of the 3 once everything was said and done, I believe. He might have actually been just a tick higher than Devin Gill, but he was the lowest rated at the time that he committed. He was a 2-star. So who's going to be that guy, right? Like they've got guys with size. DeJuan Waller, 6'3", 195. That's an impressive size for a cornerback, right? If he can move, if he can be fluid, that's, you want that type of guy to go up against a Marvin Harrison Jr., once he's developed. So they've got some guys that I really like in this class that I think could really turn out. But his teammate Jason Hewlett's one that I'm interested in as a linebacker, edge rusher type. I'm curious. I haven't really watched any film on him, but just reading kind of what the scouts breakdowns are on him, I'm interested to see what a player like him can do. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end this downer type episode because this was supposed to be a day of joy, of excitement, and I feel like I brought the temperature way down. So anyway, mailbag is on Thursday. So get your questions in. I just put the call out on Twitter not too long ago. And yeah, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for watching and or listening. We will talk to you on Thursday. Peace.